Good evening, everyone. I hope you're ready for the next presentation. We're going to talk about testing software. So testing in between the design process and development process. I am Jorian, like Joey said. I work as a software developer at Kolk, and this is Lois. She works as a UX UI designer at Kolk, and she's going to talk about testing in the design process, and I'm going to talk about testing in the process of developing. And when testing is done a lot in between steps of the process of creating an app, so testing flows back and forth between development, design, and the client. So the client get an early insight in the design and can provide feedback, so where you can improve, and we test to see if all those requirements are implemented correctly. And so the first phase in developing an app is designing and testing the design, and that is what Lois is going to talk about first.
So why is testing a design important? Companies can easily push aside testing or forget to test the design when there's not much time because they just want to make the app and get it ready to use. But it's actually a big step to save time because you can find mistakes or things that you forgot about early in the process when you're creating a new product or a new service. And there's a few steps we go through as designers before the app even gets built, and I'm going to run through all of them. Step one is make a design based on the client's wishes and user research. For example, I have the Beef app, so the mobile app and the web app. I just made a quick example, the primary color and the secondary color. We make a design based on what the client wants, and also user research that we did. The client gives us logos and colors, or we're free to make a brand name ourselves. When we made a design, this is where the internal testing starts. So we have multiple designers at our company, and before we send it off to the client, we want to see what our colleagues think of the design. And we look for a few things in this. Mostly is it user friendly, so focused on the target audience that's established. For this app, it would be elderly people. Did we forget any screens? So maybe you made a flow, and to get back to some other page, you need a page and you forgot about it. And especially if you hang up every screen like this, you really notice what you're missing. Is the content in a logical place? So, for example, is a button easy to find, or a menu? Anything really. And does the design fit the branding? So, did we use the right colors? Did we use the right icons? Based on this, we always get feedback from our coworkers, and we take this with us in another iteration. So we make some changes in the design, and then we go on to the next step, which is the client reviews the design and also gives feedback. We made a design, we go to the client, we show them the design and ask them what they think of it, and does it match what they had in mind? Are they missing anything? Do they maybe want to change some colors, some buttons? Do they agree with the flow that we built? Most of the time they will also give us feedback, which we will then again take with us and make another design iteration. It can keep going in circles. You can have few or many design iterations, it's never just a straight line, it always goes back and forth. But after some time, we do have to start building the app. So this is when we pass on the design to the developers. We will walk them through our ideas, and we will let them know to ask us questions if they need anything. Yeah, that's when we can start building. There's also some testing involved with that, so that's what Jorian will tell you about.
Okay. So there are a lot of different ways to test a piece of software. You can use a script. A script contains of test cases and its corresponding test steps, which include all requirements of the system. And when you follow that script thoroughly, you can verify if all of those requirements are implemented correctly. But there's one problem with scripted testing, and that is that an application can be navigated in a lot of different ways, especially if it's a complex UI. So that's why it's recommended to do some exploratory testing as well. So that's when a tester would use the application freely on its own, and so that you can easily find hidden bugs or errors. So it's recommended to use both of these methods when testing. There are also black box testing and white box testing. Black box testing is when the tester does not have knowledge about the internal workings of a system. And white box testing is when the tester does have knowledge about the internal workings of the system. So white box testing is always done by developers, and black box testing can be done by testers or users or designers. And black box testing, you test the system as a whole, and it's about the external expectation of the system. So test all the functional requirements of the system. And when white box testing, it's more about smaller pieces of those internal workings, like algorithms or pieces of code. And typically you use both of these methods when testing. And a lot of testing methods can be automated, like unit tests, for example. That's when a programmer writes a piece of code, tests another piece of code, and see if the output that is expected with a certain input, sees the output is as expected with a certain input. You can also automate performance tests if you want to see how well your system will perform, or if it's able to handle a certain type of loads. You can use tools and software to monitor your performance of your application, and use software to simulate a lot of users logging into your application, so sending a lot of requests to the server and see if your application can handle that. You can also automate testing of UI, so you can ask a group of testers to go through the UI. You can also write code that will emulate user input like mouse clicks or mouse movements or key presses, and see if the output is to be as expected. Automated testing is a lot more reliable than manual testing, because humans can make mistakes while testing, especially it's a really big system and there are a limited number of testers available. And obviously automated testing is way faster, but you need human judgment as well, because the application is made for humans after all. So I would recommend both of these methods. So use automated tests to quickly see if your application is still working after you add a new feature, and manually test things that are really hard to automate or impossible to automate or need human judgment. These are the four main stages of functional testing. Functional testing is when you test if your application implemented all the functional requirements correctly. Functional requirements are all the things that your system must do, can do, so all the features that it needs to implement. So the first step in functional testing is unit testing. That's where you test really small pieces of the applications. Those are called units. So you write code, like I said before, to test a piece of code and see if the output is as expected with a certain input. And but it's important that that your code is constructed in a way that those units can be tested independently and individually. So if your code is too intertwined, this is impossible to do, and your code is really hard to maintain as well. So second step is integration testing. That's where you take components. Those components consist of units, and components can be made by different programmers or third parties, and you test the integration between these components. So the goal is to detect defects defects in the integration between those components. And when the testing is when you've tested the integration, you can test the system as a whole. So you take all the components together, test the system as a whole by testers or developers, see if all those functional requirements are implemented correctly and it's all working properly. So you can go on to the final stage. That's acceptance testing. It's a lot like system testing. So you take the system as a whole, but this time you don't let developers or testers test your system, but you ask users to do that for you. So you can get valuable feedback about how the users would use the system. You can also test the non-functional requirements of your system, and non-functional requirements are things for how the system should perform. So other aspects of the system, like how secure it is, how fast it is it compatible with certain type of browsers, for example. So one thing you can do is performance testing, and use tools to do that, like I said. So you test if your application can handle a certain type of load you write it to. You can also stress test your system, and that's when you take your system beyond its peak load and see what will happen. So you can identify bottlenecks that way. Security testing is also really important to do. So you can ask a security expert or ethical hacker to look through your applications and maybe find bottlenecks or security risks, like unauthorized access to certain information or privileges. And you can also test the compatibility of your system. So test if your system is compatible with certain browsers, operating system platforms, or resolution configurations, and see that if it's all supported what you want to support. And one important thing is to do a usability test, and that's where you test the ease of use of your application by end users. But Lois is going to talk more about it later on. So when we developed Need4Help, we used a lot of these testing methods, like unit testing, for example. We written a lot of unit tests for our backend and frontend code. We don't write unit tests for our code. We only write code tests for the most important parts of our code, the most complex business logic. So we don't write tests for UI. We want to work efficiently, so we do that manually, or else it takes too much time because the UI tend to change a lot. Next, we also test the integration of those components we're using. We also use third-party components like payment services, for example. So we test the two, and each sprint, so each iteration, our project manager will go through our application and see if all the requirements are implemented. And there will also be a designer who will take a look at the UI and see if it's all according to design. And if there are any bugs, then we'll fix that and move on to the final stage of acceptance testing, where we distribute our apps to a small group of users and deploy our backend to a staging server, so we don't use real data, it's test data for the acceptance test. And usability test is also a big part of this, and that is what Lois is going to talk about now.
So usability testing is really just ease of use and is everything in a logical place. You can basically already do this with a lo-fi prototype. You can even test it with drawings, but I'm gonna speak about usability testing after it's been built. And there's a few steps and a few things to take into account when doing this. First step is making a test plan, and usually you write down your goals or what you want to find out, and you write down a few small tasks for a user to complete. So, for example, log in or upload a photo. And this is how we find out if the design is logical for the target audience. Usually we also ask the user to speak out loud what are they thinking when they're making their decisions. So we can really tell like why do they think this should be over here and not over here, or why are they not finding it. The main goal of these tests is to find out if the user understands this design and if it's logical for them. Finding test users is of course really important, because otherwise you can't do a test. Usually you will need between 5 and 15 test users, and this is just because after 15 people you will most likely get similar results, so it's not really of any use. Finding the users can be done in multiple ways. Of course, you need to know your target audience, and either the company you work for, the client can look for them. We also look for them sometimes. You can make a post on LinkedIn, on social media. You can ask people that you know, anything really to find test users that fit the criteria. It's really important to make sure the test users feel comfortable, because people are often afraid to make mistakes. So we really need to reassure them that they cannot make any mistakes, and if they can find something, that's something we as designers can improve on and not them. It's really normal for them to feel insecure about this. There's even a term for it, which is well, the Hawthorne effect. This is where people can, it switched back on the laptop anyway, without doing it on purpose, act differently than they would naturally, just because they feel pressured because there's something watching over their shoulder. Especially within the target audience of it's elderly people that might not feel comfortable using technology. So just keep repeating, you can't do anything wrong. It's just for us to make the app better. And we get a lot of valuable results out of this, and we can again decide to make another iteration, or at some point the app has to go live, of course. And after that, there's more testing to be done, which is again developer testing. So Jorian will do about that.
So in we've done all the testing, it's finally time to deploy our application, and users can finally use our app. So when they are using our app and they find problems, they can report bugs, and we log errors in our application, so we can see, we can get a little bit more context about those problems users are having if you take a look at those logs. And they can also provide feedback through the App Store, and the client can also provide feedback. And sometimes those feedback can lead to new features, and those features get planned into a new iteration. And this whole process of designing, developing, and testing can start all again. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this presentation and learned something.
About finding testers. So we try to run test sessions with potential or already customers from time to time. We struggle big time to find volunteers. Is there a trick or a tip that you can share?
It can be really difficult because of course you need someone to come over to you, or you come over to them and they need to make free time. You can, I don't know, sometimes I've given them like goodie bags or something so they actually get something out of it. And try to make it sound fun, I guess, because doing a test maybe sounds intimidating. And especially, as I said, with this target audience, it's a bit more difficult. I think it will always be a little difficult, but there are some tricks like goodie bags, make it sound fun, and create a comfortable space.
I have a question as well. Do you also use for testing with the audience heat maps? Or?
I don't know if we do it at Iconic. I think we've been trying to implement it. I have used,
We're in early stages of that. We're just exploring the use of heat maps and app interaction logging. So it's, I know that a colleague of yours, Paula, is currently setting that up. It's together with Niels, right? Yeah, here. Setting it up. So it's just early stages. As soon as we get some results from that, we might actually put it to use.
I have another question. Do you also use something of ChatGPT or artificial intelligence with writing codes or anything from that?
Writing code, I don't know, but we have tried it out. I think there's now a thing for Photoshop where you can generate images. So one of my colleagues tried it out, and also if we want to we do internal presentations as well. And one of my colleagues did a presentation on how to use ChatGPT to write a test plan, for example. So we are looking into that, and it's interesting, but sometimes the result of that presentation was we do need our own expertise to look over ChatGPT. We also try to make personas with ChatGPT, which is actually really interesting, and we would use that again.
As some developers use GitHub Copilot, it's kind of the same thing. But I'm not that. I don't think it's really that helpful. Sometimes it can help you with some repetitive code, but it won't do all the thinking for you.
You still need creativity.
Yeah.
Is it possible to prevent all the bugs before going live with testing?
I don't think that's possible to
why is that not possible?
even really big companies with large projects can do that, like Google or something. They still fix bugs or security bugs or something every.
Well, Google kan, but Konica can.
Sure.
To add on to what he's saying, it's basically you have to imagine that if you have like a flow from going from A to B, where you have in between you have 10 choices, that means you have 1024 test cases. If those choices are like binary choices, yes or no. If those choices are even like, let's say you can pick a time, you have probably maybe 10 edge cases that you have to take into account. So if you have that, if you do that 10 of those, then you have 10 billion edge cases, and that's one flow. So to write 10 billion tests is quite a waste of time for like something that you can probably test by just having someone try to use the app normally. And sometimes a bug will occur, but they will generally be such a low occurrence that if you would with normal use, and then as soon as a common bug comes up, you can solve that by testing it once, writing a test for that specific bug, and then whenever it comes back, you can catch it early.